Hello, everyone. This is Attorney Augustus Corbett, and today I want to do part two of a Facebook Live that I started yesterday, where I talked about the Black agenda, Biden versus Trump. So essentially, what I started yesterday was going through the Black agenda as it related to Biden and Trump. So I'm looking at the Black agenda that Biden has put forth, and I'm comparing the Black agenda that Trump has put forth, or I don't see that there's much there, but we're going to look at some of the things that he says amount to a Black agenda. And we're just going to compare them, and we're going to do it dispassionately, which means that we're not going to allow emotions to dictate. And this is what I advocate as African Americans. Don't let emotions dictate to you which person you choose. Look at their agendas. Look at what they plan to do, what they want to do for the Black community. That, to me, should be the bottom line. What plans do they have for our community, for our people, for African American people? And I started yesterday going through both of those men's plans, their agendas, okay? And I couldn't get through with it because, quite frankly, Joe Biden's plan is over 20 pages long, okay? And Donald Trump's plan is considerably shorter. In fact, I'm going to pull up on the screen now Joe Biden's website, and you can see for yourself. I'm on his website now, and you can see for yourself the length of Joe's plans for the Black community. The name of his plan is Lift Every Voice, the Biden Plan for Black America. Okay, so I'm going to click on that and let you see that hold on, let me make sure this website is the way it's supposed to be so that you can see that I'm getting this straight off his website. And now I'm going to start scrolling down. Okay, start scrolling down on Joe's plan. Once he get his, okay, let me just start scrolling down. These are all the initiatives that are in Joe Biden's plan. Okay. Cover a multitude of areas where African Americans are reeling from disparate results and impact. I'm just scrolling down his plan. I mean, it's, like I said, it's over 20 something pages. Okay, here we go. This is it. You can go read it for yourself. All right. Look at all that. All of that. Okay. All of this is his plan. This is it here. I printed it out. Okay. What I have here is over 40 pages, but I think there's 40 pages because the font that my printer uses a little bigger. So I think I heard one of his surrogates say it was about 20 something pages long. Now, whether he gets all of this enacted, whether he's able to do all of this, I don't know, but I do appreciate the fact that he's thinking about it and he's planning on it, okay? And it's our responsibility to hold him accountable to it and to push him to do it. but I do appreciate, again, his campaign for sitting down and looking at the issues that impact African Americans and coming up with a plan to deal with those things. Now, to be fair, let's look at Trump's plan. I'm on Donald Trump's website now, and it says blackvoices.donaldjtrump.com. Okay, so here you go. This is one page. This is one page. And even if you click the hyperlinks here, there's not much here under entrepreneurship, not much at all. Then over here, school choice, there's just one thing there. Two bullet points on the school choice. In other words, his plan to deal with all the issues that African Americans deal with in the education system, for him, he bottoms it out to school choice. School choice, that's it. We'll come back to that. Historically black colleges. There are 5 bullet points here. Again, all this is so scant that it stays on one page. Criminal justice reform, about 5 things here, and the biggest of that is the First Step Act, okay, which is woefully inadequate with all the issues that black folks deal with in the criminal justice system. All right. So there you have it. Those are the links of both of these men's black agenda. But let's look further. Let's look further. Okay. That's what I want to do today. Now, when I left off yesterday, I left off talking about affordable housing. We went through all of that. And not going to go back into that. So we are going to pick up here talking about Biden's agenda to invest in communities that need it most. So first of all, Biden's plan, embraces the 10-20-30 plan that Congressman Jim Clyburn came up with. And I want us to go to Mr. Clyburn's website here so that I can show you exactly what his 10-20-30 plan means. All right. So we're on Mr. Clyburn's website. I just pulled it up. And reading from his website, it says, in the United States, there are 485 counties where 20% or more of the population has been living below the poverty line for at least 30 years. So there are 485 counties in the country where 20% or more of the population has been living below the poverty line for at least 30 years. That is essentially generational poverty. And this is occurring to 20% or more of the population in 485 counties. And so what Congressman Clyburn has proposed, he drafted the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act, where it includes a provision that directs at least 10% of rural development investments be made in those counties where 20% or more of the population has lived below the poverty line for 30 years. So that's the 10-20-30 plan. Again, it is to direct 10% of funding from the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act into counties where 20% or more of the population has lived below the poverty line for the last 30 years. Joe Biden has he has embraced that plan, and he included it in his agenda for the Black community because a lot of these rural areas are disproportionately Black. A lot of Black people live in these areas. Areas like the Mississippi Delta. Okay, there are some parts of my home state, North Carolina, some parts of Georgia, some parts of Louisiana, where the poverty rate is through the roof, and a lot of those people are African American. Biden has embraced Representative Jim Clyburn, the South Carolina congressman who really saved Biden's campaign, right? He embraced Jim Clyburn's 10, 20, 30 plan. All right, moving on. Let's go back over to Joe Biden's website. Okay. And there we have it. We're back on his website now. Biden also proposes creating a White House strike force to partner with rural communities to help them access federal funds. I'm so delighted that he's putting some focus on these rural areas because they are very high crime, high poverty, poor schools areas. And a lot of these areas, again, are where a whole lot of Black folks live. Now, these White House strike force consists of 8 leaders who will partner with community building organizations, and they will, be able to get together on the drop of a dime and begin to implement policies and do things to help the folks in those rural areas. Joe Biden's agenda for the Black community includes creating these White House strike forces. Makes a lot of sense to me. Also, Biden talks about driving additional capital into low-income communities to spur the development of low-income housing. Because if you go in some of these rural areas, you'll find a bunch of dilapidated houses. People are living in shacks, a lot of Black folks. Well, there again, Biden wants to address that. Well, in all fairness, let's go over here, take a drink of water. Let's go over to Mr. Trump's agenda. And as you see, housing doesn't even make the list. There is a category for entrepreneurship, school choice, historically Black colleges and universities, and criminal justice reform. Nothing said about housing, not here. Okay? Let's go back to Joe Biden's plans. And he proposes building and modernizing infrastructure in communities that need it most. And the awesome thing about infrastructure is building infrastructure create a lot of jobs, okay? The building of the roads, the building of the streets, okay? All that kind of stuff results in a lot of good paying jobs. He talks about in his plan, roads, ports, waterways, schools, broadband, and more. So his plan is to build and modernize the infrastructure in America, which again, especially in communities of color, which suffer a lot of infrastructure problems. And again, the good thing about that is it will create and generate good paying union jobs, Biden points out. Okay? I'm trying to go a little faster because there's so much more to get here. Biden and his plan also, and by the way, let's go back over, look at Mr. Trump's plan. And as we see, there's nothing whatsoever here about building up, modernizing infrastructure in the black community. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. All right, back over to Biden's plan. All right, Biden has a plan to support African American workers. Okay, he proposes a plan to grow a stronger, more inclusive middle class by strengthening public and private sector unions and helping all workers bargain successfully for what they deserve. So one of the things under that rubric that he intends to fight for is equal pay. And that's critical because, as Biden points out here in his agenda, African American women earned 61 cents for every dollar earned by a white man in 2017. So for every dollar white man earned, black women on average earn 61 cents. This totals $23,653 less in earnings in a year and almost $1 million less in a lifetime. Biden has proposals to deal with that wealth, that income gap, if you will. The Obama-Biden administration protected workers against retaliation for discussing wages and required employers to collect and report wage gaps to the federal government. And they also created something called the Paycheck Fairness Act. And what did Mr. Trump do when he came in office? He repealed a lot of this. He did away with a lot of these regulations. He deregulated a lot of these companies, and which permits them to do basically what they want to do with people's salaries and in so many other areas. Okay? Biden talks about embracing Senator Merkley's Good Jobs for 21st Century Energy Act, which again is designed to protect the basic work of people, to meet the Davis-Bacon wage guidelines. And it bans anti-worker provisions like forced arbitration and overuse of temporary staffing agencies. All these little small things have a disparate impact on black workers, okay? And that whole arbitration, forced arbitration, as an attorney, I know personally how that can be used to hurt workers, because when the workers accept employment with these companies, they sign an employment handbook which contains an arbitration clause. And if that worker is injured on the job, if workers' compensation doesn't kick in, then that worker is forced to go to arbitration instead of being able to sue the employer. So that protects the employer, and that gives the employer very little incentive to create a safe workplace and to pay the worker a fair wage. So these little tricks that a lot of these corporations have in their employee handbook, Joe Biden's plan, his agenda has taken note of it, and he intends to do something about it. Okay? All right. Joe also has a provision in his agenda to address the unequal hiring and promotion practices that a lot of companies employ. A lot of companies will not hire black people, even when they're qualified. And if they are hired, they won't promote them based on merit and qualifications and job skills. They promote and hire on the basis of race. Biden wants to address that in his agenda. I keep having to go back over here to Mr. Trump's so-called agenda, and I see nothing that addresses that issue. So you don't have to take my word for it. Here it is in black and white. I'm showing it to you. This is not, as I've said, this is not even personal for me. I have no personal affinity to Joe Biden. Like I said yesterday, as far as I'm concerned, he's an old white guy. I don't know him from Adam. Never met him. None of that. I am supporting him largely because of this agenda that he has for my people. I'm concerned about my children, my grandchildren, my family, and so forth. And that's why I'm supporting him. Because again, when I compare the plans of these two people, now just, yesterday in part one of this, I talked about the records of both of these guys. Well, even if you're able to overcome Donald Trump's racist record versus Joe Biden's record of supporting civil rights, you still need to ask the question, what do each man have planned for the future for the black community? And you're looking at Trump's plan versus Joe Biden's plan, again, which is 20 to 40 pages. All right. Very detailed information about things that he and Obama had done and things that he intend to do in the future and things that Donald Trump, when he took office, he cut so much stuff. All the stuff that Obama and Biden have put in place to protect workers, to help minorities. When Donald Trump took office, him and the GOP, they began to deregulate and cut a whole lot of that stuff. And like I said yesterday, it's hard for me to understand why any African American would support a man like that who has done damage to the black community, and yet there are black folks who want to give him 4 more years to do more damage. I don't get that. And that's all because of partisan politics. You got some black Americans who are opposed to Democrats no matter what. Some Democrats who are opposed to Republican no matter what. My thinking is, I heard somebody, I think, put it best. We have no permanent friends or enemies. We have just issues. We have just issues that we're dealing with in the black community. And so we need to support, in my mind, the person who is best interested in addressing those issues. Okay? All right. Let's keep working with this. And I do need to speed it up because there's so much here in his plan. All right. Joe Biden mentioned the protection of essential workers in the COVID-19 crisis. A report, Joe included in his agenda, a report that basically says black Americans are overrepresented in 9 of the 10 lowest paid high contact essential services, which elevates their risk of contracting the virus. All right. So Joe Biden has released a plan to protect these essential workers and give them the respect, the dignity, and the pay that they deserve. And speaking of COVID-19, Donald Trump has been the president during this pandemic, and his leadership has been terrible. And one of the things that he has done is blamed Obama for all the almost 100,000 deaths and going on 2 million infections. He has said that Obama is the reason why his response, Trump's response, has lacked, any real substance because Obama left the cupboards bare. He left the pandemic office without any resources. Well, someone sent me an article today which shows that that is a complete, total, absolute lie. It is a lie, total lie. Okay? This article was written by the editorial board. Let me get a drink of water. Was written by the editorial board for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And I won't go through all of it. But here's how it starts out. Woe is Donald Trump. The long-suffering, misunderstood president just can't make the world understand what a raw deal he got. The pandemic, let me put it on the screen so you can read along with me. The pandemic, hold on. There we go. I just enlarged it so you could see it good. The pandemic was China's fault, or was it the World Health Organization's fault, or the lax U.S. response by President Obama? Quoting Trump, he says, "We inherited a broken, terrible system. Our cupboards were bare. We had very little in our stockpile." That was Trump's attempt, frequently repeated by the president in the White House, to lay responsibility for the inept pandemic response at Obama's feet, as if 3 years in office was insufficient for Trump to repair all the supposed damage his predecessor wrought. The editorial board said, except it is a lie of colossal Trumpian proportions. This is the editorial board. Now notice what they did to prove that Trump is lying about this. They said, and I quote, "We've taken the time to dissect Centers for Disease Control and Prevention budgets." So they got copies of the CDC budgets from the year before Obama left office all the way to the present. So they got budgets for the CDC office the year before Obama left all the way to now. And here's what they said. Trump can lie, but the numbers cannot. Obama left office with an unblemished record of building up the nation's pandemic preparedness. Trump systemically sought to dismantle it. Let me read that again. Obama left office with an unblemished record of building up the nation's pandemic preparedness. Trump systemically sought to dismantle it. Perhaps because of his experience with the 2015 Ebola outbreak, Obama sought to leave his successor fully prepared to confront future pandemics. He asked in his fiscal 2017 budget request to boost federal isolation and quarantine funding by $15 million to $46.6 million. Congress approved $31.6 million. In Trump's 3 years in office, he has not requested a dime more in funding. Obama asked to nearly double his own $40 million outlay for epidemiology and laboratory capacity. Congress balked because, remember, Congress fought Obama everything he tried to do. But Obama left Trump with that $40 million as a starting point. So I don't know if I don't know about you, but I don't think $40 million is leaving the cupboard empty. What did Trump do? In his 2020 budget, he asked Congress to cut that number to zero. He asked Congress to cut the pandemic office funding to zero. How do we know that that was true? Because they looked at the budgets. They looked at the numbers. The numbers don't lie. The numbers don't lie. They got copies of the budget. And the budget defies every lie that Trump has told to blame Obama for not having funding to address this COVID-19 outbreak. It's all big fat lies. Okay? Something this president knows very well how to do. These are just the facts, ladies and gentlemen. Just the facts. These are just the facts. So when I read here about Biden's plan to help protect essential workers in the COVID-19 crisis, and they are disproportionately African American, I can't think but to read you this and to inform you that this man is lying. This woefully inadequate response, this inept response to this COVID-19 outbreak has nothing to do with Obama. It is all Donald Trump, who spent the better part of January and February and half of March denying that we even had an outbreak. And meanwhile, this virus was spreading and started killing people left and right. Okay? All right, let's keep moving on. I thought I would just throw that in there. Now we come to Biden's plans for high quality education and racial inequity in our education system. This is very dear to my heart. This education thing, very dear to my heart. In fact, you see over my head a book that I wrote entitled Education and Justice. This is something that I happen to know a whole lot about. Okay. In fact, I was a school teacher for a while. All right. Now, as president, Biden will ensure that no child's future is determined by his zip code, parents' income, race, or disability. Biden will build an education system that starts with investing in our children at birth and helps every student get some education beyond a high school diploma, whether a certificate, associate's degree, a bachelor's degree. Biden will, to accomplish this, and I love this. I love what he talks about here. He will provide high quality, universal pre-kindergarten for all 3 and 4-year-olds. That is so important. Our kids need a head start. They need to be taught reading early. They need to start learning math and arithmetic and science and all of that as early as possible so that they don't enter school behind everyone else, because that's what tends to happen. There is an academic achievement gap that plagues public schools, and that is where white and Asian kids and even Latino kids are here in their test scores and black kids are down here on the bottom. Well, that is the result of generations, even centuries of racial inequities. And we have to address that. And one of the ways that Biden would like to address that is by providing high quality universal pre-kindergarten and by also eliminating the funding gap between white and non-white school districts. That is critical. That is key. Okay? The white school districts, because they tend to have higher property taxes, are able to supplement what most states provide per student. These wealthier white school districts can add money to what the school pays per child, and their kids end up getting a better education. The average black community can't do that because they are not high property taxed, high income school districts. So our kids end up being dependent upon the amount that the state provides. Let's say that in County A that is disproportionately black, let's say the school district gives $50 per child. And let's say the school district gives $50 per child in County W. County W, where it is predominantly white. But the children in County W is not dependent just on that $50 because their families are high income families and they are able through their property taxes to give their kids an additional $50. So that is $50 for the black kids in County B and $100 for the white kids in County W. That's unfair, and that contributes to the achievement gap between our children. Joe Biden wants to address that. Improve teacher diversity. Very critical. My research leads me to believe, to know, that African American children need more African American teachers, especially African American male teachers. Okay? Most teachers in the public school system are white females, and there is a huge cultural gap between the average white female, and the average black child, black youth, especially if that black youth is a black male youth. There's a huge, huge culture gap there that interferes with that teacher's ability to treat this kid fairly, to teach this kid, to have high expectations for this kid, and so on and so on. What has Trump done to address these education issues? Well, one thing I want to tell you he did is he appointed Betsy DeVos, or DeVos, however you pronounce her name, a billionaire, I think from somewhere in the Midwest, a white lady who knows nothing about education, and she's been wealthy all her life practically. She has no affinity, no empathy for what the average black child from a low-income district is dealing with. And she has been busy for her 3 years at the education department, just gutting a whole bunch of Obama, Biden regulations to protect black children. That's what Trump did, okay? If you think that that is good for our children, then you have the right to vote for Trump. But I want to know what is wrong with you. Now, when we look at Trump's plan for education, we see one thing here, and that is school choice. And school choice is where parents can take the money that their child get from the school district and use that money to put the child in a school that is a better performing school. I'm actually for that. Okay. Now, there are plenty in the Democrat Party, plenty liberals who disagree with me about that. But listen, I have some strong disagreements with some Democrat policies and with some liberal policies. One or two we're going to talk about. But I do agree with school choice. However, school choice is not a panacea. And by the way, it's not there for black kids. It's there because white parents want to be able to use their money. They want to be able to use the money their kids get to put them in some white private school. That's really the whole issue behind school choice. But be that as it may, I do think that it's wrong to keep black kids in poor performing black schools without giving them the ability to take that money and go and put their kids in a better school. And right here in the area that we live in, an African-American woman went to prison for taking her kids out of a school district with poor performing schools, putting her son in another school district that she didn't live in, and she went to prison for that. So this whole education thing really can make your blood boil, all right, when you look at it. Also, Joe talks about addressing the African-American student debt crisis. All right, listen to this. The typical bachelor's degree graduate has about $16,000 in debt compared to $23,000 for African-American students. That's $7,000 more. And then a recent Brookings Institution study showed that African Americans graduating with a 4-year degree are 5 times more likely to default on their student loans than white graduates. African American students are 3 times more likely to default. The inequitable burden of student loan debt, Biden talks about, contributes to the stark racial wealth gap that exists in society. So he, again, just the bare fact that he mentions that, is beautiful. Whereas when we go back over here to Trump's plan, the only thing that he says about education is school choice. All right, school choice. That's it. And again, that's there to help whites. That's not there. And it doesn't address all of the issues that black children face in the education system, from elementary school to middle school. And what kinds of things am I talking about? Let me be specific. Again, I just mentioned to you the academic achievement gap. Black kids in the 4th, 8th grades tend to read below grade level. They tend to test below grade level when it comes to science, when it comes to math. Black children are disproportionately suspended from school, especially black males. Black children are disproportionately placed in the special education classes, and are disproportionately routed away from the AP classes. Pardon me. So they route our children to the special education classes, and they route them away from the AP classes. Okay. So those are some of the issues, in addition to tracking and a whole bunch of other issues that our children face. Yet in Trump's plan, there isn't one thing here other than school choice to address those issues. All right? Enough of Trump's plan. Let's go back to Biden's plan. Okay? Increase college completion by making college affordable for African American students. 64% of white students graduate from four-year institutions compared to only 40% of African American students. A lot of black students start college, but they don't finish, in other words. Make public colleges and universities tuition free for all students whose family incomes are below $125,000, including students at HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities. So Joe says he would like to make schools free for kids who are coming from parents who make less than $125,000 per year. That makes good sense to me. That's just simply investing in our children. What has Donald Trump done since he's been in office? He has taken $1.2 trillion and given that money to his rich friends. And then what has he done to pay for it? He has cut all sorts of things to help the African American community. Those are just the facts, ladies and gentlemen, just the facts. Okay? Biden proposes investing in $70 billion in historically black colleges and universities and minority-serving institutions that will train our next generation of African Americans professionals. All right, now Trump did have something to say over here about historically black colleges. Let's see what he says. Trump provided more than $500 million in loans to HBCUs through the Capital Financing Program. He worked with HBCUs, and these are all his claims. I have not verified this. He worked with HBCUs to protect $80 million in Title III carryover funding. Compare that to Biden being on the record as saying he wants to invest over $70 billion in HBCUs, not give them $500 million in loans, but invest $70 billion in HBCUs and to make HBCUs tuition free and all other schools tuition free for any family that makes less than $125,000 annually. Okay, you see the difference? Let's keep tracking. Let's keep looking here because I want to get through this today. I'm not going to read everything. Okay, there's a lot more here. You go on Biden's website right here and you get a copy of this for yourself and you can read it for yourself. Okay? All right. Let's talk about Joe Biden's agenda for ending health disparities by race. Well, let's start by going over and seeing what Trump has to say. In all fairness, Let's see what Trump has to say. And that would be nothing. You see here for yourself. He says nothing about addressing the health disparities in the African American community. He has 4 categories: entrepreneurship, school choice, historically black colleges and universities, criminal justice reform, and he only has 4 or 5 bullet points under those. Those are the facts, ladies and gentlemen. Not only that, but we all know that Trump has worked tirelessly to get rid of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. He has just worked his fingers to the bone trying to repeal, and they've gutted a lot of it, okay? But he wants to gut the rest of it, and that will leave tens of millions of African Americans without any health care whatsoever. Okay? What does Biden want to do to address this issue? Well, he wants to make affordable health care accessible to everyone. Okay? He wants to strengthen Obamacare. He wants to create a public option. I don't know if I agree with that completely or not, but this is what he wants to do. He wants to reopen Obamacare enrollment so uninsured individuals can get insured. Trump has tried to close it. Don't want anyone else enrolling in Obamacare. And part of that's just because of his hatred that a black man, Obama, became president. So he made it his business, with the backing of 51% of the white community, to basically abolish the Obama legacy. Okay? And a lot of people, I said yesterday, I want to say it again, a lot of even black people say that Obama did nothing for the black community. That is woefully inaccurate. That is blatantly false. Obama and Biden did a lot for the black community, but they had to do it covertly. They had to do it quietly. A lot of it they did by executive orders. And a lot of other stuff they got done by sort of slipping it in. Okay? But there are a lot of things that they did by way of regulations and executive orders. And as soon as Trump took office, he and the GOP began to deregulate all of that stuff that Obama and Biden put in place to help black folks. These are just the facts. I don't want to give him 4 more years to do more damage to the black community. Okay? All right. Reducing the uninsured rate for African Americans by creating a public option health plan. Again, I don't know if I fully subscribe to that. Okay? But this is a part of his plan, and I'm going over the plan. Let's, by the way, go back, or we're still looking at Trump's plan to close health disparities and the health gap, and we see that there's nothing here. Not one thing. This is his whole plan right here. Okay? And this is so important, dealing with these health disparities, because that's part of the big reason why so many more African Americans are dying from COVID-19. Okay, let's keep working. Now there's something here that Biden proposes that I strongly disagree with. And that is, he says that he wants to expand access to reproductive health, including protecting the constitutional right to choose. I am pro-life, okay? I do not support abortion, absolutely not. And I don't support this legal right to choose. And of course, I know that God gives us all free will and give us the right to choose to do whatever. But that is not what this is saying, okay? This is not just one's God-given right to make a choice. but this is protecting a woman's ability to terminate a pregnancy, a baby's life. I strongly object to that. And I have no problem saying that. That is the one thing in the Biden plan that I strongly disagree with. All right. And in all honesty, I used to be pretty much a single issue voter. If a politician was pro-choice, I didn't vote for him. But I'm not that way today. Okay. I still strongly oppose abortion, but as a lawyer, I've learned that oftentimes it is not the president in the seat there in DC, in the White House there in DC, who is able to really stop or anything with abortions. Those are pretty much state issues. Okay, so those issues, the issue of abortion pretty much is a state issue. Now, the president has the ability to appoint folks to the U.S. Supreme Court. And when they do so with the hope of appointing someone oftentimes who will either protect Roe v. Wade or who will overturn it. Okay? Again, I'm strongly pro-life. But I'm not pro-life in the hypocritical way that Donald Trump is. In fact, I don't even believe he's pro-life, to be honest with you. I don't know. I don't know the man's heart, but I don't believe so. And part of the reason I don't believe so is because of the way he's pushing these people back out here in the face of this virus. Okay? In the face of this virus, he's pushing people back out here, and so that's increasing the death rate there. I mean, almost 100,000 people have died as a result of COVID-19. And a lot of that has to do with his mishandling of this, and now his forcing, the opening of churches and now schools. I mean, that's going to cause a lot more death in this country. That doesn't sound like a person who's pro-life to me. I'm not pro-life in that sense. I'm pro-life from womb to tomb. I'm as strongly pro-life when I see a white police officer shooting a black man to death. I'm pro-life when I see a black man shooting a black man to death. I'm pro-life when I look at these COVID-19 deaths. I'm pro-life when I look at the health disparities. I'm pro-life from the time a baby is born until that person, that baby became, is in the grave. I want to see that person's life protected throughout the process. Okay? All right, let me get another drink of water here. You can't see these lights, but there are hot lights that are shining in my face and they make me sweat, so I have to drink a lot of water. But okay, so let's move on a little bit more. We're coming to the end of Biden's plans, of his Black agenda. And now we're talking about his commitment to justice, This also has a special place in my heart because I am an attorney, and it is every day that I see the inequities in the criminal justice system, from the police from the cop on the beat to the disparities, disproportionate percentages of black men especially, in the prison system. So this is dear to my heart as well. What does Trump say about this? Let's go there first. So he has a section here about criminal justice reform. And he says 90% of those who have had their sentences reduced are Black Americans. Let me point something really important out about that statement. First of all, I've not verified that statement. I don't know if it's true, but let's assume it is true. This First Step Act, and that's what he's referring to, the First Step Act only affects federal inmates. And there are only about 200,000 federal inmates, give or take. Most of the inmates in our country are in state prisons, and the First Step Act does nothing to help them. And a disproportionate percentage of those people are, in fact, Black Americans. Okay? Now, there have been a couple of high profile folks, Black people that Trump, one in particular, I can't think of her name, that he's gotten out of prison early. This one person I have in mind, she was assisted also by Kanye West's wife. What is her name? I can't think of these folks' name. But anyway, whatever her name is, she helped get this lady out of prison. Well, that was one case. And then I can think of maybe two other people. Wonderful. That's good. And every little thing that the First Step Act does, and I looked at it very closely. I read that statute from page to page, and it does a very few small things to help federal inmates. Doesn't do anything to help state inmates. And it is just what the name says. It is the first step. There need to be 50 more steps to really address all the injustices in the criminal justice system. And by the way, Kanye's wife's name is Kim Kardashian West. Kim Kardashian West, yes. But this is all that he talks about here, the First Step Act, and how that is the best thing for Black America since sliced bread. It's not true. It only helps a small percentage of those folks who are incarcerated, the federal inmates. Most of the folks are state inmates, and it only helps them on the backside. It only gives them a few privileges to do emails and all of that. And I'm not belittling that. Those when you're locked down like that, those things are appreciated to get a little more time emailing or a little more phone time. Okay? No question about it. But where the help is needed in the criminal justice system is on the front side. In other words, we need help with the cop who's out there. Okay? With the cop who's out there racially profiling Black guys. That brings me to something. That brings me to this very sad story that has recently begun to circulate in the media. And it's about this police officer who put his knee in the neck of this Black guy, and the Black guy died as a result. I want to show you a little something here. I just want to show you a video. I think you should be able to see this video. Let's see. Now, if you look down beside that police car there, you'll see that Black man on the bottom down there. And the police officer got his neck, his knee, with his full body weight on that man's neck. Okay? This is how they treat us. This is where we need the help. This is on the front side of criminal justice reform. This is horrific. This is horrible. There's a close-up of this. This man died. This man died. And I can remember when Donald Trump first became president that he told an association of police officers, don't be nice to people. Don't be nice and considerate to people. Treat them like this. You remember that? That was early in his presidency. Okay? So when he brags about all the Black folks that he's helped with the First Step Act, it's all lies. This right here, look at this. This man died from this treatment. Okay? This just happened not long ago. And these officers are just standing by and just watching this. He has his full body weight on this man's neck. This reminds me of Eric Garner, who was choked to death on video. All right? Donald Trump is not lifting a finger to address this. Not one finger. Stop listening, if you will, to all of his lies. And we're going to go away from this because this is hard to watch. Okay, we're going back over to Trump's stuff here. So that's all he talks about, the First Step Act. There's so much wrong in our criminal justice system, you wouldn't even believe me if I told you. All the stuff that I see every day fighting for these oftentimes young black guys and the way the system treats them. Okay, from their first, not just encounter with the police, but from white people calling the police on them for no reason, because they are banking while black, because they are driving while black, shopping while black. Breonna Taylor, the young woman in Louisville, Kentucky, was shot to death while she was sleeping while black. Okay? Donald Trump's not lifting a finger to help this. Joe addresses this in his agenda. But Trump got this little stuff here about the First Step Act. Trump went on the record as saying he's all about law and order. He called for the death penalty for 4 black and 1 Hispanic young men who were falsely accused of rape. And even now he hasn't apologized to them. Even now he hasn't said anything saying that he was wrong. Even to this day, although they have been completely exonerated and received a payout from the city of New York. So how can we believe him when he says that he's all about trying to do criminal justice reform, not based on this little mess here that he got up here? No. Look, stop falling for the sound bites. Donald Trump is a master at manipulating the TV, manipulating the media, and saying stuff. He has a real big bully pulpit. All the cameras want to be in his face when he says all the stuff that he says, and that drowns out everybody else. But 50%, if not more, are lies, total lies. Like when he lied on Obama leaving no money in the pandemic cupboard. When we see from the CDC budgets, that was a total lie. Okay? Now, let's go back over here to Joe's plan to address some of these disparities in the criminal justice system. First, he says something here about reducing the number of people incarcerated in this country while also reducing crime. And it's not lost on me that Joe co-sponsored the crime bill that some people argue caused a lot of black folks to go to prison, which is factually wrong, because the crime bill is a federal statute, or was a federal statute, and it sent only people to federal prison. And like I just said, 200,000 or so of people are in federal prison. Most of the 2.3 or so million people in prison are in state prison. And that crime bill did not put them there because it is a federal statute. Okay? But even still, Joe was big enough to come out and to apologize for not really seeing some of the unintended consequences. How many times has Trump apologized for anything? He basically has said that it's against his religion to apologize. He doesn't apologize for anything, ever. At least Joe came out and said, well, yeah, we could have thought it through more. But keep in mind, again, most of the Congressional Black Caucus supported the crime bill. The crack epidemic, which is what it was designed to deal with, was a very violent epidemic. And like I told you yesterday, I lost 2 of my own brothers in that. 2 of my baby brothers. One was 15, one was 17 during that period, that era. So something had to be done. And that's what they came up with. Okay? And it did help. It did reduce crime. But there were some unintended consequences. And Joe has acknowledged that. That's still not enough for me to get on the Trump thin, dishonest bandwagon. Not at all. Joe talks about how the criminal justice system must be just and root out racial, gender, and income-based disparities in the system. How true that is. If you're poor and black, I think it's Brian Stevenson who said, you get treated worse if you're poor and rich than if you're white and poor. You get treated worse in the criminal justice system if you're white. You get treated worse if you're black and rich than if you're poor and white. Brian Stevenson said that. An attorney who's doing some tremendous work, a man that I greatly, greatly, greatly respect for the work that he has done in the area of criminal justice. Listen to him. Go to his website, eji.org, equaljusticeinitiative.org. Go to his website and see what he has to say about whether or not Donald Trump's criminal justice reform is worth paying any attention to. Okay? What else does Biden talk about? Biden talks about the criminal justice system should become focused on redemption and rehabilitation. Oh, how I agree with that. Our justice system, the prison system, is very punitive, very mean-spirited. I think it's a relic of slavery. Okay? They treat people like animals in these institutions. Whereas if they start treating people with some respect and treating them like they're human, then maybe when those people come out, they'll have more hope and more reason to go the straight and narrow way. All right? I think that's good on Joe's part. To expand and use the power of the U.S. Justice Department to address systemic misconduct in police departments and prosecutors' offices. Oh, I can't tell you how important that is. I would play this video again for you. I can't tell you how important it is to address police misconduct. Okay? I am going to put this video on again. I want this playing as I talk about this. Sorry about the ad. After the ad, then it'll come back on. But there's systemic police misconduct. And Joe talks about the distrust that is between the police department and communities of color. He talks about, for example, the city of Ferguson, Baltimore. These cities were under a consent decree with the Department of Justice until Trump came in office, and Jeff Sessions rescinded all of those consent decrees, and those cities could go back to their normal practice of racial injustices and racial hatred. That's what Donald Trump did. Don't listen to his lips. Look at his policies. Look at his record and look at his lack of an agenda. Okay? Oh, there's so much. So much here. He wants to reinvigorate community-oriented policing. He wants to invest more money in public defenders' offices. That's good because a lot of public defenders' offices are overstaffed, underworked, and underpaid. Some of them, like some of my colleagues here in Dallas County, some of them have 150 to 200 cases just stockpiled. That doesn't give you enough time to really do the job that you need to do. But they are so short-staffed and they can't oftentimes bring more people in because they don't pay people hardly anything. Joe says he wants to address that. Donald Trump hasn't said a word about that. Okay? Joe talks about ending the criminalization of poverty. And what he's specifically talking about there is, there's that video again. What he's specifically talking about there is ending the cash bail system, because some people end up staying in jail just because they don't have sometimes $500. Do you remember the story of, can't think of her name. She was killed in a jail here in Texas. Her name will come to me in just a moment, but she was in jail because she couldn't do a $500 bond. Just a $500 bond. And she ended up, look at that video. Isn't that awful? The full weight of, I can't even look at that. Let's move on from that. The police just have contempt for the black community. Donald Trump's not trying to address any of that. Sandra Bland, that's her name. Sandra Bland was in jail because she couldn't do a $500 bond. And she ended up either killing herself or someone killed her in jail. I don't know what the outcome of the case was, can't remember at this moment. But there are a whole lot of folks in jail because they can't come up with a bond. The people that got money, they get out overnight oftentimes. Folks who don't have money, oftentimes poor black folks, they stay in jail just because of the bond. And here in Dallas County, for example, there is an outbreak of COVID-19 in our local county jail here, okay? An outbreak of COVID-19, over 200 something cases. And we're fighting to get our clients out of there. And we're also fighting to keep our clients out, okay? But don't think for a moment the system is trying to do anything to get them out, or much of anything to get them out or stop them from going in, even when they are accused of relatively minor offenses. But we keep the fight going. We keep the fight going. I wish I could go in detail on some of what I'm talking about. Okay? And Joe, this is real big too. Joe talks about eliminating existing barriers that prevent formerly incarcerated individuals from fully participating in society. Isn't it true that once a person serves their sentence and pays their debt to society, that they should be able to pick up and get on with their lives without having to deal with the felony records? They should be able to expunge those records. There may be in certain circumstances where, you know, if it's a person who has a violent tendency or something of that nature, that they, you know, people need to be on notice that this is a violent person and has a tendency of being violent. But so many times, so many folks who are in our state jails are there because of nonviolent offenses. And they come out and they still have the stigma of that felony record. And they've consequently lost their right to vote, lost their right to certain jobs, lost their right to live certain places. Joe wants to address that. I give him big kudos for that. Let's see what Trump talks about on that score. Let's see. There we go. There we go. All right. Waiting on the screen to come back. There it is. What do you see up there about addressing that? Zilch. Okay. Reforming the juvenile justice system. So very, very, very important. We represent juveniles at our firm. We need all the help that we can get reforming that system. Now, I think this is the last section. It is the last section, and it deals with voting rights. All right, let's see what Trump has to say about voting rights. It's on your screen. What do you see up there about voting rights? What do you see up there in his, I guess what he would call his black agenda about voting rights? Zilch. Nothing. All right, let's compare that to what Joe is saying. Joe says President Trump has rolled back civil rights enforcement across the government and has cut staff for the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice. So the United States Department of Justice is tasked with prosecuting civil rights violations and cases. Like, for example, Ahmaud Arbery, the men who killed him, folks have asked the Justice Department to come in and see if his civil rights were violated, to see if it was a hate crime. And what Trump has done is he's put a man in there, first of all, William Barr, who is no friend to civil rights, absolutely not, and Jeff Sessions before him. These are not men who have any love or affinity for our civil rights. They just as soon to gut them as to look at them. They see civil rights laws and enforcement as an offense to their Confederate heritage, and they can't wait to get in these positions so that they can gut these civil rights laws. Those are the people that Trump don't want you to see, but that's what they be doing behind the scenes as he gets in front of the camera and brags about all that he's done for the black community. All the people he set free, all the things he's done for the black, but he doesn't tell you that he has cut funding for civil rights enforcement, that he put 2 folks over the Justice Department who hates civil rights, that the first 2 years of his administration, the Civil Rights Division has investigated 60% fewer cases of civil rights violations. And you say that some of you that he deserved 4 more years to continue this reign of terror on our rights as African Americans? What is wrong with you? Explain it to me. I know, some of you say, well, what you read a moment ago about his support of pro-choice. And some of you would further say, well, and his support for gay marriage. Listen, those are not the 2 only issues that African Americans are dealing with on a daily basis. Sure, we need to do everything we can, in my opinion, to get rid of abortions. And I definitely believe in traditional marriage. Absolutely. But those are not the two issues that we're dealing with. We're dealing with a myriad of issues. We're dealing with pandemic, epidemic on top of epidemic, on top of epidemic, on top of epidemic, on top of epidemic. And we've been doing so. So we, in my opinion, have to support presidents who have an agenda to address those issues. Because once again, when it comes to who gets abortions or who don't, that's pretty much a state issue. Okay, so you can actually vote for Joe Biden on the national level and then do what you think you need to do on the state level to stop abortions. Do you follow me? And also the same is true, like who marries whom and all of that. A lot of that is relegated to state law. Right? So if you're not with Joe on that, as I'm not, there are other ways that you can fight that, while at the same time supporting initiatives to help you, your children, your grandchildren, and so forth. We just showed you that video of the police officer with his knee in that black man's neck. That could be your son. That could be your granddaughter. That could be you. That could be me. Trump has said nothing about these kinds of things. When Ahmaud Arbery got killed, he said on the record, well, we didn't see all the video. We don't know what happened outside the video. He was finding a way to justify and to defend the actions of the McMichaels. All right, we're coming to a close. Biden also has a record of reauthorizing the Voters' Right Act. Okay, and he has stood opposed to laws to gut, civil rights laws. So he has a strong record. Racial gerrymandering and voter suppression. Joe has stood against all of that and pledges to continue to stand against those things. So when I look at these records, and one last thing, environmental protections. You may not know very much about environmental justice, environmental laws, but they have a big impact on the Black community. Just think about Flint, Michigan. That's just one glaring example of what happens in our communities when it comes to the environment. That's just one example. All the landfills, all the lead pipes, all the pollution, they tend to be disproportionately in our communities, okay? Communities of color, because the people who are doing the city planning, they make sure that stuff doesn't come to their neighborhoods. It goes to our neighborhoods. Well, folks, I went through the whole plan that Joe Biden, his whole Black agenda, and we looked at Trump's so-called Black agenda. I don't see how that you can conclude anything but that Joe has a real Black agenda in place and Trump does not. I don't see how you can come to any other conclusion. So to the question of, do they have a Black agenda? The verdict, based on the evidence that I provided you, which I showed you is creditable evidence, the verdict is Joe Biden has a Black agenda. Donald Trump does not. Don't take my word for it. Go to their websites. Check it out for yourself. Thank you for spending this time with me. Please share this video. Please host a watch party. Help me get the word out. Once again, it's not personal. I don't know Joe Biden. He's not paying me to say anything. I don't hate Donald Trump or any of that. But when I look at these men's records and their agenda for my community, for people who look like me, for me and my family, it's an easy choice. Thank you. Have a good one.